The following episode of CrimeBrew of Kgosi Tau-Bantsi contains details of gender-based violence as a whole, including rape, sexual assault, domestic violence, and more. If you have been affected by recent or past experiences in regards to gender-based violence, please go to the websites of the Botswana Gender-Based Violence and Prevention Support Center and Women Against Rape alongside Childline Botswana. Additionally, if you'd like to speak to a Childline representative, the toll-free number is 390-0900. Previously on CrimeBrew of Kgosi Tau-Bantsi, we began brewing the chilling case of the Griekwastad Murders. It all started in the quiet farming town of Griekwastad in South Africa's Northern Cape. On the evening of Good Friday 2012, Steenkamp, his wife Christelle, and their young daughter Martella were brutally shot and killed. The only survivor was their eldest son, Steenkamp. He drove himself to the police station that night, reporting the murders to the authorities, his remaining family, and later the entire community. However, something about Don's demeanor was unsettling. His reaction was eerily calm. As the investigation, led by Colonel Dick Duval, unfolded, the police quickly realized that Don's account didn't add up. He claimed to have been in the family barn when the murders occurred, initially leading the police to suspect a failed farm attack. But forensic evidence soon dismantled his story. His timeline didn't match the official findings. Gunshot residue was found on his torn shirt and shorts, despite his attempts to wash the blood off his body after alerting the police. Even more damning, Martella's blood was splattered across his clothing. A deeper probe into Don's possible motive revealed a staggering inheritance, 20 million rand from family trusts tied to their farmland property. And in the aftermath of the killings, Don's behavior took a bizarre turn. Once known as a shy, quiet boy, he now basked in the attention, embracing his newfound notoriety as, quote-unquote, the sole survivor. He was seen smiling, cracking jokes, and even flirting with girls, an unsettling contrast to the gravity of the tragedy. The final, most harrowing revelation came with the autopsy results. While Dion and Christelle were shocked, with Dion also suffering blunt force trauma to the head, Martella endured the worst fate. She had been shot multiple times, severely beaten, and in a sickening twist, raped before her death. With the evidence mounting, all signs pointed to Don Steenkamp. The motive was clear, his behavior suspicious, and the forensic findings damning. But the question remains, will he get away with it? This is CrimeBrew with Kgosi Tau-Bantsi. Welcome to the fourth episode of CrimeBrew, Botswana's very first true crime podcast. I'm Kgosi Tau-Bantsi, and welcome back to part 2 of The Perfect Family, the Griekwastad Murders. I apologize yet again for only posting this episode now instead of last week Wednesday as I originally promised. As I stated in the part 2 announcement video that I posted on Instagram and TikTok, things got very busy for me last week, mainly because I'm an A-level student. And time isn't always on my side. Nah, who am I kidding? Time's never on my side. Anyway, I'm here and I'm ready to conclude this case. And I hope you're ready to end this with me because I cannot stress enough that this is a deep case. And in today's installment, it's gonna shock you. So I hope you've liked and subscribed on YouTube. I hope you're following the show on Spotify as well. I hope you're sharing this show to your family, to your friends, and following the show on Instagram and on TikTok as well. And I'm aiming to have I'm aiming to have 100 followers on all platforms very soon. So let's all make that milestone together, shall we? So I hope you've got your cups of tea ready. I've got mine ready right here as we finish brewing the case of the Griekwastad Murders. So if you remember, we left off with Diwal. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for saying it like that. I mean, I'm never ever gonna have so much fun with a surname like Diwal ever again, unless another surname I come across at some point during this series makes it even more fun. I don't know. So if you remember, we left off with Diwal and the police discovering that Martella was raped prior to her death. And given the amount of DNA that the police have already uncovered, it can all be tied to one person, her elder brother, Don Steenkamp. Now, this was a big piece of information, a highly sensitive piece of information at that. Plus, the police knew that if this information were to be revealed to the public immediately, that could cause more rumors to spiral out of control, making these murders more sensationalistic than it already is becoming. Thus, the police decided to keep the details of Martella's rape private until they were at a point whereby the information can be shared. On Tuesday, the 21st of August, 2012, now 16-year-old Don Steenkamp, because his birthday was a few days ago prior to this, now 16-year-old Don Steenkamp was arrested for murdering his parents and younger sister at Grey College, the private boarding school in Bloemfontein that he goes to. It was a public spectacle, to say the least, as Diwal and the police officers, they went into the headmaster's office with a warrant for Don's arrest. The headmaster soon called Don into his office, where he was then arrested for 3 counts of murder. Don left the office in handcuffs with Diwal and the police officers as they escorted him through the entire school corridor to the car park, while the entirety of Grey College stood and watched in shock, as they probably thought to themselves that it's either their suspicions were proven or that they couldn't really grasp that Don, this formerly quiet, unassuming jokester who had gained so much more sympathy and condolences from them since these murders, could be in any way responsible for what happened. Word quickly spread about Don's arrest. Don was arrested at 12 noon that day, and exactly 1 hour later, regional radio station OFM already announced his arrest on the 1 p.m. newscast. When Diwal looked at Don in the rearview mirror as the newscaster revealed what was happening, he saw Don smile. This guy smiled at the thought of the attention that he was receiving from his own arrest. This is Norman Bates psychotic right there, because in my opinion, it's already bad enough that you're enjoying the attention you could have never gotten if your parents and sister were still alive. But to smile upon hearing the words, a 16-year-old boy has been arrested in connection to the murders of Dion, Christel, and Martella Steenkamp, which occurred in the early evening of Good Friday. Like, what? Anyway, Don's arrest soon got a hold of major newspapers and news networks across the entire country of South Africa, as he, along with the police officers, traveled all the way back to Griekwastad for his bail hearing. Now you're probably thinking, why is Don addressed as a 16-year-old boy in South African media? Well, it's because of the Child Justice Act of 2008 in South Africa. You see, this act is mainly centered on criminal perpetrators who were minors, as the act stipulates the following: children under the age of 10 cannot be prosecuted for crimes, regardless if they're guilty or not. If prosecuted, they would have to go through various forms of assessment to see whether a trial or a rehabilitation is the appropriate way for them going forward. In Don's case, given the crime that was committed when he was 15 years old, there's a child-friendly court which could hold him more accountable given the magnitude of this crime. And boy, oh boy, 3 murders and a rape charge. Boy, oh boy, this is going to be taken very, well, not necessarily very, I'll just put it in quotes, quote unquote, very seriously. You'll understand why. Also, it's possible that child perpetrators may get reduced criminal sentences and records if they manage to go through counseling and community service programs, and they would receive a lawyer, even if it's unaffordable to the perpetrator. Another key thing to note was that due to this act, even if minors, did it or whatnot, whatever, their identities will remain concealed to the public until they turn 18 to prevent stigma, because the whole point of this law is to give second chances to children who commit crimes, which is a good idea on paper. But every act has its loopholes and controversies. So keep that in mind, because the Child Justice Act of 2008, that's going to come in much later, so keep that in mind. Anyway, Don's bail hearing began on the 23rd of August 2012, and the entirety of Griekwastad were waiting outside the courtroom for what could possibly happen. Some waiting outside included some of the colored residents who were angry, not just at Don for committing these crimes, but also because the police were being racist, having believed that it was one of them first before they solely focused on Don. Because remember, South Africa does a very great job marketing the Rainbow Nation to the world when really all their issues haven't actually gone away. They just morphed into new ones. At 8 a.m. that day, Don arrived escorted by the police, and he was led by Diwal into the courtroom where neighboring magistrate Oswald Mazwi. Hey, wait, no, let me say that again. Magistrate Oswald Mazwi. There, good, right. Magistrate Oswald Mazwi would preside over Don's bail hearing. Many witnesses were called to testify, including Don's tin-pegging coach and his legal guardian after the murders, Benny Hegroot. Oh Lord, Afrikaans surnames. Hegroot. And his private social worker, who both stated that there is no way Don could have ever committed these murders because he knows the value of his education and the value of his future. Therefore, he should be given bail. Diwal testified for the state and stated that due to the evidence that was collected alongside the forensics and the reports of his behavior from witnesses after the murders, there is no way that the evidence can suggest that anyone other than Don would be responsible for the murders. Additionally, the state's social worker had assessed Don prior to the bail hearing and found that not only did he understand the gravity of the charges against him, but he's fit to stand trial. So, Magistrate Mazwi had a lot to think about, and he couldn't really reach a decision immediately. So the state noticed this, and they asked Magistrate Mazwi, here's the thing, would it be best if we just have a 10-day extension until Monday, the 3rd of September 2012, for you to come to a decision? Magistrate Mazwi was like, okay, cool, and he adjourned court. Obviously, Don and his family were up in arms because Don would have to wait 10 more days until a definite conclusion on his bail would be reached. The anger and distress would only increase when the media learned of Mandela's rape a few days later and, basically ran off the story. So at that point, the family made a decision that they can't let the media and the press really to continue eroding Mandela's dignity and their own privacy. And they had even begun the process of barring the media from attending further court proceedings, especially during testimonies from the witnesses during the bail hearing. So anyway, 10 days pass. Magistrate Mazwi comes back to court with the families present, and he came to a decision. Don was to be granted 5,000 Rand bail. His family were ecstatic. Yay, we can just pay the bail and boom, he's going to be with us as we prepare for trial. Because they were thinking, okay, one part of the storm is finally over. And now they could prepare for his trial and get him acquitted in peace. oh, how wrong they were. A few weeks after Magistrate Mazwi made his verdict, the National Prosecuting Authority, or NPA for short, submitted an appeal to overturn the verdict that he made, stating that Magistrate Mazwi did not understand the case's facts at all. And the appeal went so far as to, being granted an appeal hearing where all the facts were reassessed. However, the appeal was rejected by the High Court because the judges in the High Court couldn't find enough concrete evidence to state that Don would pose a flight risk if he was released on bail. Because they were just like, he's a 16-year-old kid. It's not like he's going to go around terrorizing Griekwastad and South Africa and, force them, hey, can you just keep the details of what I did secret and I can just get off scot-free, blah, 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 or to intimidate any witnesses. So, therefore, Don was still a free man or boy, whatever. But his trial was nearing soon. On Monday, the 11th of March 2013, the trial of Don Steenkamp began at the Kimberley High Court, and the trial would be presided over by Judge Frans Khomo of the Northern Cape High Court. There was significant media abuzz about the trial as Don pleaded not guilty to 5 charges, 3 counts of murder in regards to his parents and Matela, raping Matela, and obstructing the ends of justice. Every witness you could think of came out of the woodwork for this case. The majority of the police officers who investigated the case testified with their accounts alongside photographs and evidence collected throughout the entirety of the investigation, including Don's bloodied clothes that he wore on the night and the guns used in the murders. I think it was a 22 revolver and 37 No, there was a 22 rifle and a 37 revolver. There, that's it. Those are the guns that were used during the murders. And Dr. Lemaine Fuchs, who was the pathologist who analyzed the dead bodies of Don, Christelle, and Matela, also testified about her findings on their bodies and had indeed confirmed that Matela was raped prior to her murder due to the injuries she sustained on her vagina because of the apparent forced penetration. But no semen was found around her vagina, so this could suggest that she washed herself off after the rape. The Steenkamp's farm workers took to the stand as well to testify what they did during the night of the murders. Friends and family of the Steenkamps also testified. A lot was going on, to say the least, and unfortunately, I don't have the time or the energy to delve into the specifics. But you can read the book, The Griekwastad Murders, The Crime That Shook South Africa, written by journalist Jacques Steenkamp, no relation to the Steenkamp family, for more. Very detailed information. There was even an in-local inspection. Now you're probably wondering, what the hell is that? Basically, this in-local inspection consisted of Don, the judge, the prosecution and defense teams, along with the media, traveling to Norwalk Farm, the Steenkamp's family farm where the murders took place, to inspect the area and gain a better understanding of how the farm's layout had affected Don's timeline and the police's timeline as well. There were also 2 key testimonies during the trial. The first one being from Colonel Diwal. Sorry. So, Diwal stated how the forensic evidence had only weakened Don's timeline of events from the fact that, number 1, there was no forced entry into the Steenkamp home at all. Number 2, the gunshot residue test tested negative on Don's washed hands, but tested positive on his clothing. Number 3, GPS data proved his theory that it would only take 20 minutes for Don to commit these murders and drive to the police station. Not 40 minutes as Don claimed, because remember that text that Christelle sent to Mandela literally seconds before Don killed them all over what, a holiday? Yeah, a holiday. That really altered Don's timeline of events very negatively. And we also have to think about number 4, the fact that he stood to gain a lot of money, 20 million rand from the trusts his parents made for him and his sister that he would receive in the event that his parents die. And after the murders, he was more extroverted, more jovial, much more flirtatious with girls than he ever was before killing his family, supposedly. Therefore, given the amount of evidence, Don was responsible for killing his family members as a result. The second key testimony came from none other than Don Steenkamp himself. Oh, good Lord. After taking the stand, Don provided the court with another version of his own events. He testified that on Good Friday 2012, he had lunch with his family, and after they finished eating, he went out to hunt for meerkat around the farm with his dad's .22 rifle, which he admitted to taking from the safe where they were supposedly kept throughout the afternoon, before returning that rifle back to the safe and locking it up. He then went to the family barn, left his family in the house, watching TV, doing their thing, as he tended to his weapons in the barn, just as his family got murdered by someone else. He hid in the barn as his family were being murdered. He rushed into the house after a apparent perpetrator or perpetrators left. He found his parents dead. He watched helplessly as his sister died in his arms. The defense jumped on Don's theory as they stated that there were reports of glasses. I'm talking about glasses you drink 1, 2, 3 with, like glasses, found outside the Steenkamp home when the police were investigating, with one distinct fingerprint. Now, just a bit of a side note, there were 72 samples of DNA from blood, from fingerprints, from whatever, made throughout the entirety of the Steenkamp home, Don and the victims themselves, making this the most DNA evidence ever collected in a case in South Africa's judicial history. Damn, these people touched a lot of stuff. However, the fingerprint on the glass wasn't identified to anyone, making Don's theory a lot more useless, and really, it just became a dead end. And Don's defense team began to suffer a lot more as the trial progressed, as Don's guilt became ever more apparent to Judge Kgomo. On the first final week of the trial, believe me, first final week, you're going to understand why, more witnesses and evidence came forward, and the defense team couldn't keep up with the constant cross-examination that they had to make on everything that the state provided. Therefore, due to the magnitude of the case's evidence, Judge Kgomo decided to postpone the trial. Which to me is just crazy, like, yo, there's more stuff? And the judge is just sitting there like, damn it, I don't think it's going to be a simple open and shut murder trial. Like, SS. That's just crazy, yeah. So anyway, the trial recommenced after 5 long months in September 2013, and it would continue up until December that year, when at the point where the closing arguments were supposed to be made during its second final week, Don made the absolute bright decision of firing his defense team due to quote-unquote irreconcilable differences following a quote-unquote breach of trust between the Steenkamps and Don's defense team. Lord. Another reason for this was because Don's legal team was still unpaid. Because let's do not forget, legal fees are expensive as hell. And for a family as wealthy as the Steenkamps, they felt the pinch in more ways than one. Now, remember Don's elderly grandfather, Don Steenkamp Sr., who suffered 2 strokes while the police were busy investigating the case? Well, Don Steenkamp Sr. suffered another stroke. This was his 3rd stroke in a row. And this time, it would prove to be his most fatal stroke because he died a few weeks later. Whew, that's just tragic. I won't lie, right? So, therefore, the Steenkamps had to pay medical, funeral, and legal fees at the same damn time. At the same time that they were preparing to bury another family member, they're dealing with another family member fighting for his life in court. So, the Steenkamps lost another victim to Don, their own grandfather. Good Lord. Woo-wee, does this case get any more tragic than this? Anyway, a new defense team was formed, and they suggested to Judge Kgomo that the trial would have to be postponed again so that they could be prepared. Judge Kgomo agreed, and the trial would not resume until March 2024. Not 2024, what the hell am I saying? Until March 2014, when the trial resumed for the 3rd and final time. It kills me to think about the cowardice of Don Steenkamp. This man, at the very last moment where everything was going to get wrapped up, he was just like, you know what, let me just be a bitch to my own family and fire my own defense team because they ain't doing shit. Wee. This man is truly entitled and spoiled. Bro, why would you do this? Anyway, this is just the worst way of buying time, in my opinion. Deliberately, making the judge having to postpone the trial again because the day before the final arguments of the trial were bound to happen, you fire whatever. So, the defense team submitted an application to have the case reopened and reinvestigated. But that was quickly rejected, and on Thursday, the 27th of March, 2014, nearly 2 years since Don, Christel, and Martella Steenkamp were killed, and just over a year since the trial began, first began, the trial finally ended. And Don Steenkamp stood as he heard Judge Kgomo's verdict. Guilty for all 5 charges. 3 counts of murder for his father, Don Steenkamp, mother, Christel Steenkamp, and younger sister, Martella Steenkamp. On top of those 3 counts of murder, the rape of his younger sister, Martella Steenkamp, and obstructing the ends of justice. Don Steenkamp is going to prison at last. However, just when you thought you've heard it all, there is one more shocking detail which you need to be aware of. His sentencing. 2 days before his 18th birthday, on the 13th of August 2014, Judge Kgomo sentenced Don Steenkamp to a total of 76 years to serve in prison, 20 years each for the murders he committed, 12 years for raping his sister before killing her, and an additional 4 years for lying to the police after the murders. That sounds like a very good number. 76 years. 76. That's a life sentence, basically. But, and I really mean but, the South African judicial system did what they do best. In fact, they're like, professionals at it at this point. Fuck it all up at the very last minute. Because Judge Como stated all of the convictions that Don got would be served concurrently based on the harshest prison sentence he was handed, 20 years for murder. So, all of the 5 counts that Don was charged with, 3 counts of murder, rape, obstruction of justice, will only be served for 20 years. Not 76 years, 20 years. With an added possibility for parole after 10 years. This man's really gonna spend 20 years in jail for 3 murders, a rape, obstruction of justice, which he definitely committed because there was no way in hell that Don Steenkamp wasn't in any way innocent. Sole survivor my foot. Like, what the fuck was that? I mean, this man was so calm during the entire thing, He tried to cry crocodile tears at his family's funeral. This man reveled in the attention that he got from everyone, after his family got slain. Instead of being all hysterical and feeling guilty that he's still alive, he's just like, family? What family? I ain't got no parents anymore. Why the fuck is that a problem to me? And my sister Matella? Not my problem anymore. Yippee-ki-yay, I can do whatever I want. And I'm going to be 20 million rand richer. Like, what the fuck was that? Like, I'm sorry, just what the fuck was that? So anyway, after Don received his sentence, his family were there, crying for him, hugging him, as he was taken down to prison. Which I'm like, yo, you shouldn't be supporting him in any way, because he's not innocent. The evidence does not lie. The very same man you're crying for, the very same man you just hugged, is responsible for murdering 3 members of your family. The same family he's a part of. 3 murders, his parents, his sister. And on top of that, I might have to add one more for his grandfather because this shit killed him. The only consolation of justice was that on his 18th birthday, his identity was finally revealed to the world after years in confidentiality under the Child Justice Act of 2008 to the whole damn world. So now everybody knows that his name is Don Steenkamp, and that his charges are 3 murders, rape, and obstruction of justice. At long last. Despite the fact that, for the most part, Don Steenkamp got away with raping his sister, murdering her and her parents, and obstructing justice, all for money, attention, and pure psychopathy. What the hell? Just what the hell? Currently, Don is serving his sentence at the Kimberley prison. He was in the juvenile prison block from the time his sentence began until he turned 21, when he was transferred to the adult prison block. And just last year, he stood for parole after serving half his prison time, 10 years, just before his 28th birthday. And he's probably thinking, time to get an early birthday gift in the form of my release from prison. However, his parole was denied. So at least there's good news. But the fact that this man's going to be out in less than 10 years from now and become a functioning member of society again, who could possibly be 20 million rand richer or more, because, hey man, it's farmland at the end of the day. That shit escalates in value every single year. This man's gonna walk out of prison a flaming billionaire. The fact that it could happen is very scary, to say the least. Now, the Steenkamps were obviously left in ruins following the murders and trial. The farm workers were laid off and they were given severance packages, but hey, they now became a statistic. A very, very scary unemployment statistic. Oops. Nauk Farm eventually became abandoned. And Betty Steenkamp, Dion's mother and Don's grandmother, who had to endure the loss of her son, her daughter-in-law, her granddaughter, her grandson to prison, the death of her husband. This woman lost a lot. And unfortunately, in 2019, Betty Steenkamp died around 92 to 93 years of age. So, I won't lie, that's not a very, very good way of going out. She was supposed to enjoy her golden years, her twilight years, but instead she lost so much in under 10 years, all because of her grandson. I know. And remember when I said that there was a movie based off this case? See, the book which I talked about was initially published in April 2014. And that book became so popular that in 2019, screenwriter Detjes Kap, I hope I pronounced that surname correctly, Detjes Kap and director Joshua Maherb began production on the movie based on the book, simply titled Griekwastad. The movie starred one of Hollywood's favorite Afrikaner actors, Arnold Vosloo, to play Colonel Dick Duval. I'm sorry, my voice is dead. Yes, sis. But yeah, he was going to play Colonel Dick Duval, and young actor Alex Van Dyke was going to portray Don Steenkamp. It was released in May 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic on DSTV's box office to great acclaim, actually. On IMDb, it got 7 out of 10 stars. On Amazon, it's got 4.5 out of 5 stars, which is pretty good, I won't lie. And it even won Best Feature Film at the 2021 SAFTA Feature Film Awards, which is basically SA's answer to the Oscars, BAFTAs, Emmys, all in one. I watched the movie myself, and it's a really good movie. A bit rushed in my opinion, but nonetheless I enjoyed it. So if you're listening on Spotify, I've linked the YouTube trailer and a link to the movie on Showmax. I'll also do the same on YouTube to the best of my ability. So if you have an active Showmax subscription currently, you can go check out the movie and watch it for yourself. Finally, let's turn our discussion to Colonel Dick Duval. Sorry. So, Dick Duval. After the trial, he continued to work for the SAPS in the Northern Cape for another 9 years and worked on more high-profile cases nationwide. Unfortunately, he died of COVID-19 complications on May the 14th, 2021. According to the official statement from the SAPS in regards to his passing, he's best remembered as a man of pure joy and unbreakable perseverance who led from the front. There was no case or task that was too complicated for him to solve. And this man really saw the Griekwastad murder cases through. He's one of the few shining examples of the SAPS, which every police officer in South Africa really should look up to, because this man knew how to investigate a case, and for that he should be remembered for the rest of his life as being one of the most dedicated leaders in the Northern Cape division of the SAPS. At the time of his passing, he was survived by his wife, acting Provincial Police Commissioner Henriette Duval, and their 3 children, a daughter Anneliese, and 2 sons Arno and Handri. May Diwal's soul rest in eternal peace and power. Godspeed, Colonel Dick Diwal. Godspeed. The Steenkamps were genuinely a perfect family to all that knew them. Dion was the gentle giant who owned a wealthy farm and other surrounding farms, but he never let that get into his head. He taught kids, including his own, on tent pegging. He was even the deacon at the local church, the Dutch Reformed Church in Griekwastad, and his wife was equally loved by all due to her journalist skills and her emerging baking business, because everybody loved her biscuits. Martella's departure from the world is also tragically noteworthy, because there was a lot she could have done if her young life wasn't so tragically violated and ultimately taken away by her own brother. Think about it. Her own brother took this young girl's life away. Don was supposed to protect his sister. Instead, he raped her, he killed her with their parents, people that gave him life, and he took theirs away with 2 guns. That night, the lives of the Steenkamps and Griekwastad as a whole were tragically altered due to the actions of one quiet but depraved, entitled idiot who thought to himself, "Oh no, I can't leave school and farm full time because my dad said no. Oh no, my dad refused to let me spend Christmas with my friend and his family on the coast. Oh no, I can't get any girls or any attention for that matter, yet my sister's out there getting all the attention I deserve to give her to other people. Ew, ew, ew. If I can't have my sister and the farms I've won, nobody can." Like, bro, just go outside, touch grass, realize that the whole world does not revolve around you. Anyway, what can be done? Nothing. Justice for Don, Christelle, and Martella wasn't properly served. And this case reminded me of the fact that no matter how rich you are, what color your skin tone is, and other external circumstances, in South Africa, everybody suffers the same crap, useless, and really inefficient judicial system. And another key thing which I just forgot to mention was that when I was reading the book that Jacques Steenkamp wrote on the cases, there was a section in which Steenkamp wrote that stated that during June to August 2012, Don watched a hella load of porn. I'm talking a hella load of porn, an unfathomable amount of porn, And I'm like, why are you watching so much porn at a time when, you shouldn't really be watching anything very sexually gratuitous, given the fact that you raped your sister? And, the Jacques Steenkamp also goes on to mention that, Don said so himself. He said that he believes that out of all of the girls he's ever talked to, the most beautiful girl, in Don Steenkamp's opinion, is his own younger sister. What in the hell? Like, not even, not even going to Alabama will save this guy. I kid you not. So, you're probably thinking what I'm thinking, throughout the time that this man was masturbating, jerking off like he never jerked off to every single porn picture, video, whatever. This man really thought to himself, wow, all of these women I'm jerking off to, I'ma imagine them like my own sister. What? Just No, man. This man really, when he was masturbating, he masturbated to the thought of his dead sister who he raped. Fucking hell. Anyway, I've already wasted time on Don. So instead of talking about him any further, we have to mourn the true victims of this month's case, the Steenkamps and Griekwastad. Life will never be the same for the Griekwastad community at all. Like, the town is forever tainted by what Don did. And at the center of it all, Don, Christelle, and Matela's lives shouldn't be in any way remembered for the way it was taken from them, but for the good that they did while they were still alive, for the joy that they brought to the community, family, and friends, and for representing that harmony and proper parenting can be possible in a family. I mean, look at Matela. She was going to achieve great things in her life. She was beloved by all, but she shouldn't be remembered as this case martyr, despite the fact that whereas her parents lived considerably full lives, she didn't. She didn't write her matric. She didn't have a first boyfriend. She didn't achieve all the dreams she could have possibly ever wanted because at the age of 14 years old, Matela Steenkamp was raped and killed. An ever-growing, troubling statistic in Southern Africa as a whole. When will enough really be enough? Because to me, she should be remembered for her smile, and the smile and warmth she gave others as well. Therefore, never forget the names of Dion Kroes Steenkamp, Christelle Steenkamp Nimassen, and Matela Steenkamps for the lives they lived, not just because of the impact of their tragic deaths. And that is the very, very sad case of the Griekwastad Murders. Anyway, if you enjoyed this episode, comment below, share, like, follow CrimeBrew on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also follow CrimeBrew's Instagram and TikTok pages alongside my personal Instagram, which I'll link below. Next month, we're going to delve into one of the biggest corruption scandals Botswana has ever seen. Woohoo! No murders, finally. Hey, because, man, these murders are deep. Yes, that's... Try and guess what it is in the comment section on Spotify and YouTube if you can. But until then, continue brewing your cups of tea, Bahaitzo, and I'll see you just around the corner in April for the next episode of Crime Brew with Kgosi Tau-Bantsi.